Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We have a quorum, and thanks to my committee members for showing up so quickly. And we'll get the meeting started. Let's see who we have here. Let's go and do a fairly easy one. Senator Burke, and then Senator Underman, we'll get you next if that's okay. Is that all right with your schedule? Yes. Okay, thank you. Senator Burke, let's do Senate Bill 271. Everybody should have that one in your folder. See if you have your copy. Okay. That's LC 37210-1S. 37210-1S. Everybody have a copy and ready to go? Okay, Senator Burke.
Senate Bill 271. This is a Department of Behavioral Health bill that deals with involuntary commitment, changing some of the timelines in that process in order to improve the operations of the department while still protecting patients' right. And I would be glad to answer questions if there's anybody that has questions on the details.
Questions from the committee? Representative Lott.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have one question. Do you know what the definition is? I was just having trouble where it says, well, throughout the bill it says who has mental illness.
Well, the people that this has to do with are people that have mental illness and are found by a physician or licensed psychologist to be a danger to themselves or society. That's all the people. This doesn't deal with just anybody with any mental illness. These are people who have been 1013 and then gone through that involuntary commitment process.
And that is defined in the code? That's defined already?
Yeah.
I was having trouble finding that. Okay.
Can we have somebody from the department stand up, please? Identify who you are and answer the representative's question. Representative Lott, do you have another question?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Representative Petrie, questions for the senator?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Burke, I just wanted the department is behind this bill, right? They support this bill.
It is their bill.
It is their bill. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, and I understand. I see certainly in my community so many occasions where we have individuals that we really need to make sure we protect them against themselves and certainly protect others. And
how'd they let you out?
I'm not sure myself, but I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Just teasing. So, okay. Any other questions? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the bill? Do we have a sign up? No one signed up for it? Okay. What's the posture of the committee? Representative? Oh, do pass. I'm sorry. We have a motion to do pass and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, everyone in the favor of the passage of Senate Bill 217 say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No? No. Okay, Senator, you do need to go to rules and fill out a sheet. Huh? Who's the House sponsor on this?
Who is the House sponsor?
Representative Hardin.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And okay, back to what I was saying. All right, it's okay, Roma. You do have to go fill that form out if you want to get it on the sheet for consideration, and you do have to show up at rules and stand against the wall and ask for your bill.
I was there and had a great time this morning, Madam Chair.
Okay. But I would go and fill that form out right away if you want to get hopes to get it on right away on the right sheet.
Okay. Thank you, Madam.
You're welcome. Thank you, Senator. Okay. Representative Unterman. And that would be Senate Bill 314. I'm the rep on that one. I'm going to do it. So let's see. Everybody check out and make sure you have the Senate Bill. We have a substitute to Senate Bill 314. We're working off LC 33660 ERS.
Actually, Madam Chairman, I don't have a copy.
Oh, well, can somebody hand the senator hot off the press?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to bring before you Senate Bill 314. This bill passed unanimously as it was written with a different version, I believe, out of the Senate HHS committee with the support of the Georgia Board of Nursing. No one spoke in opposition to this bill in the committee, and no one spoke in opposition on the floor. I'd like to just bring your attention to the fact that there are many nurses in the state of Georgia, and I'm proud to have been a former nurse. I'm not a practicing nurse now, but we looked on the website, and there are approximately 32,753 LPNs in the state. And this is when I presented it on the floor, so it may have grown a little bit or decreased in the last 2 weeks. There's 120,580 RNs, registered nurses in the state, for a total of 153,333 nurses. That's quite a few professionals in the state of Georgia, and I'm very proud to have been a part of that profession and to be able to help them, because these are the people that take care of the sickest of the sick and also preventing disease processes and keeping the state of Georgia healthy. This particular bill attempts to address an issue that has been long running with criminal background checks and making sure that everyone that is in the profession does what they're supposed to do. The bill amends Title 43 relating to advanced nursing practices and advanced practice registered nurses. It's important to note that nothing in this bill changes current licensing requirements. This bill partly serves as a housekeeping bill to restructure and delineate the requirements of APRN licensure in Georgia Code to be consistent with the Georgia Board of Nursing. I'm not sure the current version, but the version that passed the Senate provides for criminal background checks, allowing the board to have authority to do these checks for APRNs and advanced practice nurses. These criminal background checks provisions are added in sections 2, 3, and 5 for the purpose of cracking down on people looking to defraud the system. And that's exactly how this particular bill came up from this summer. Last summer, you recall there was a high-profile case with a actress, and she was unfortunately placed into a hospice location, and a nurse was supposed to be taking care of her, and unfortunately it was a case of fraud. And that's what this bill attempts to do, is to weed out the bad actors in the profession. Each applicant who submits any application to the board for licensure renewal agrees to provide the board with any and all information necessary to run a criminal background check. This includes, but is not limited to, fingerprints. This bill makes clear that the applicant is to be responsible for all fees associated with completing the background checks. I can just quickly go through the bill. I have my version. I'm not sure what you eliminated.
Well, Senator, if you
changed.
you want me to have, we're working on a very short time period, and I'm sorry for that. It just literally
sorry.
is hot off the press.
Yes.
Can I get somebody from the Secretary of State's office to come and tell you what the changes were that were made, so you'll know
Sure.
that?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Right, wherever.
Good afternoon. My name is Candace Brose, and I'm a legislative attorney with the Georgia Secretary of State's office. This substitute is a product of some negotiations between our office and the Georgia Board of Nursing. It keeps the bill that came out of the Senate pretty much intact. What it will do, though, is that it's going to elevate certain activities of imposter APRNs. It'll elevate their activities to a felony in certain circumstances, in line with what I believe we have for physician's assistants. And let me just make sure I'm getting everything. Right now, under Georgia law, we authorize APRNs. They hold an underlying RN license, but we just have that additional authorization for the APRN designation. This would change it to an actual license for them. This is a recommendation that came from the Georgia Board of Nursing along with their Assistant Attorney General. And just to be clear, we know that might be needed, that change is needed, but this bill does contain a funding clause, if you will, at the end, just because we do need to make sure that we have the appropriate funding before we could have full implementation of this bill based on our current resources.
And is it my understanding that the Georgia Nursing Board had asked to do background checks, and there was no parameter set on who they would do background checks on? And the change that was made says that they will do the background checks only when there has been a complaint against the nurse and it rises to the level of an investigation. Is that correct?
The way that it's written, it will give the board and our division director, who oversees all of our boards, the authority to kind of come together, decide what a minimum number of background checks they could do based on our resources. And so working together, we're confident that they'll be able to go through some of the people who currently hold a license and have not yet undergone a background check.
Okay. Those are the changes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's agreeable.
That's agreeable with you. I think it was just tightening the bill. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Senator,
yes,
go ahead.
Yes, that's fine, because that's exactly what we're trying to do with the fraud.
Thank you.
And elevating it to a felony is absolutely a positive direction because of that very high-profile case, but there has been other cases with imposters. And the problem is, we have reciprocity with states, but these are people who are moving in like through staffing agencies, and the scrutiny is broad.
So, ready for questions? Mm-hmm. Questions for the senator? Representative Kidd.
Thank you, Madam. I support the legislation. I read it and I like it. But two questions. One, how much is the cost? It says the applicant pays the cost of the background check. Do you have any idea what the cost of that background check is?
I did have the cost. It's pretty minimal considering, is pretty much what other professions are. I have someone from the Georgia Board of Nursing here. If you want to know for an RN or LPN.
I didn't know if it was $300, $500, what it might be.
$70 for new graduates.
Right. And the second thing is, with 100 and some odd thousand nurses, why is it said that? Why do we seem to have a nursing shortage? A great percentage of those aren't practicing.
Well, it's really interesting. We do, like I said, have 153,000 nurses, but some nurses are, unlike me, I never kept my licensure. I dropped it. But some are very sentimental, and because it's a very nominal fee, $70, they keep it for a lifetime. So most of these nurses are not practicing nurses.
That's what I assume, because there seems to be a shortage of nurses, and all nursing schools are busting at the seams.
Right. But once a nurse,
always a nurse. And I'm one of those sentimental people that I do keep my nursing license up in case I need to give cough syrup to members of the Senate.
More stronger.
Excuse me. So anyway.
Thank you. At the proper time, Madam Chair.
Okay. Other questions for the senator? Okay. Here we go. Representative Barr.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Would you walk me through just when this takes place, when we start the new procedure of doing the background checks? And I see a date in here on line 87, but that seems to be already legislation of 16. I assume it would be later on than that because we've already had folks renew. I don't understand the process, so if you just help me out, I appreciate
I
it.
think that will be set by the nursing board. You know, we have a composite board, just like we do a medical board. We have the board of nursing, and I think they would set the parameters. And because this is an undertaking, I think it will be up to them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Price. Candace.
Does this change the scope of practice?
Not at all. No, ma'am.
And can you tell me what the difference is between certified various types of nurses and registered various types of nurses?
Well, I believe there's 4 different kinds of nurses. And nurses originally, when the chairman and I were nurses, you know, it was just you were a plain registered nurse. But it has been subjugated, just like in subspecialties of medicine, where you have cardiologists, nephrologists, whatever. And the nurses have gone into the separate fields too, with nurse practitioners, family nurse practitioners, OB nurse practitioners, an advanced practice registered nurse, and it's just different degrees of educational levels and subspecialties. But this bill in no way changes any type of scope of practice. This is just a regulatory bill. It's not scope of practice in any way.
But Representative, you don't, I mean, they are supposed to practice within their
Scope.
area of expertise.
Yes.
I mean, just because there's a shortage in South Georgia in some little
Right.
town, we do not want a pediatric nurse practitioner
Right.
doing adult health.
Right.
I mean, they're trained in one area, in a specific area, or a, I don't know, nurse anesthetist is not a good one, but one or the other. Like, psych is my area. I really am not qualified to do adult health. So
That's
it
right.
needs to be identified so people know there are areas of expertise.
And that's part of what the Board of Nursing does, is kind of policing that. And they're doing a good job. It is difficult because when you're ferreting out the ones that are working and aren't working. But we're getting there. We're making advances. It's been difficult over the years. And one of our main problems is that the money goes to the Secretary of State. And you will recall when we took out the pharmacy board and the dental board, you know, all the money went to the Secretary of State, but that doesn't mean that policing arm the investigative arm has the ability to be able to use that money to do it, because the Secretary of State, and that's always been the conflict between the General Assembly and the Secretary of State's office with the professional boards.
Representative Reiners.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair of the Senate. You're hitting on something that I was very close to doing the Secretary of State's budget a couple years ago, and having a special licensing board study committee on that particular issue. And I don't want to make this specific to nurses, but there's almost a board situation in general, because
Right.
as the board changes,
Right.
as you know, sometimes that's problematic, and then we get shot at for not funding enough or not this or and so I'm very hesitant now. And so with that in mind, as a backdrop, and I know you're following me on that, line 73, which meets such other criteria as established by the board.
Yes.
One of the things that we found in that study committee was some of those boards, and again, would almost use the board position as a way to up fees, eliminate competition, from air conditioning to a variety of different kind of boards. I think there's 41 of them or something. Are you concerned at all
Well,
on that being too broad, just in general with any board?
well,
And I don't know how to fix it, but
I have worked on this for many years, just as you have, and I have the same concerns. And we did have problems with the nursing board, and the chairman and I have worked extensively with them. And part of the problem was the appointees. And I believe this governor has taken a very conscientious effort.
well, we know one wasn't reappointed.
Yes. He's made a very good effort to assist the boards and have direction and to have oversight. And also the General Assembly has had much more input. And when the dental and the pharmacy came up, we had a lot of input, and I think that's the way it should be. And I think we are moving in the right direction. If you asked me 5 years ago, I would say absolutely not. But I think because of the governor's supervision and the governor's interest in it, that it's really being cleaned up. And this is a part of that cleanup process. When you start dealing with fraud and folks that are pretending to be a nurse that aren't a nurse in the most delicate of lifetime sequences, like in hospice care, oh my gosh, that's really where you want professionals. And that
Bobby
has,
Christina.
Yes, and that has not been the circumstance, and that's why this bill, I've just been so adamant about it passing, that it's so imperative of the quality of life for all Georgians. It's basically public safety.
And finally, Madam Chair, and I support the bill, and I appreciate it so much, but as we move forward just in the General Assembly, I'm one of those that always love those kind of things to have a comma afterwards with the yearly report to the House and Health.
Oh, that's fine.
Only because then that gives us a mechanism to go back in if we see something that's wrong. I say that on all boards because we don't know what's going to happen down the road. But thank you so much for this legislation.
Thank you. Representative Price.
Just one quick follow-up, Madam Chairman. Does any of this reduce any level of training whatsoever among these?
No.
And what's the minimum number of years that would take to be an advanced practice nurse?
I think I'll ask, because I don't want to misstate, if I could have Brenda Rowe from the Board of Nursing come up, and I think she could answer that question. If you just want to stand right there.
Okay, sure. My name is Brenda Rowe, and I'm president of the Board of Nursing. They have to have a BSN, which is a 4-year program, and then they go into a master's program, which is typically 4 semesters, and they do a number of hours of clinical practice, and then they have to pass a national certification exam in the area that they are certified to practice.
Are there any less than 4-year nursing programs now?
Yes. Oh, sure, certainly. There's associate degree programs, and there's still a few diploma programs around.
Okay, thank you.
So you're Chairman, you're saying that they have a 4-year degree and only 4 semesters in the nurse practitioner program, or is it 4 semesters in the clinical? Before
It is a 4-semester full-time program for most programs, and they would, go for. Or actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Like if they started in fall semester, then they would go throughout the year and graduate in December of the following year.
Okay, so unlike the physician's assistant programs, which usually run 18 months to 2 years, this is a 1-year program.
Well, it just depends upon, the one I'm speaking of is like a nurse practitioner, family nurse practitioner program. Your CRNA programs are longer than that, and so it varies according to the certification that you or the degree that you're getting.
But to cover all the areas to be a family nurse practitioner, we're talking and all the illnesses that they would see.
Yes, for primary care.
Okay, is 4 semesters. There is in the bill also about schools that you have the ability to regulate the nurse practitioners programs, and that any would be, you would have to have your approval first. So this would be like if we have ones coming in that are over the internet and with no clinical experience, I would take it the board would not approve them.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but this is the first time I'm seeing this. Can you tell me what line we're on?
Oh, let's see. Hold on just a second. I had it just a minute ago.
Some nursing program was trying to.
Oh, okay.
Okay. When it's, to practice nursing, it's on line 164. Conduct a nursing education program preparing a person to be practice nursing as an advanced practice nurse unless the program has been approved by the board.
We have never had regulatory authority to approve graduate programs. We only approve initial licensure. That's all that we have ever done. We have 79 programs here in Georgia, and those are our associate degree and baccalaureate programs. We do not have authority for RN to BSN for any type of graduate or PhD program.
Okay. Hold a minute.
our authority has been limited to initial licensure for initial license for both LPNs and RNs. So this would be broadening our scope of regulation, and it would also be a funding issue for us because there are numerous graduate programs in the state of Georgia. And then you would also have to take into consideration the online programs with Georgia.
And can we just verify that that's what he's doing and you're fine with, aren't you, and Senator, of them had the board having the right?
If you wanted to, on line 165, if you wanted to put a period, 164, conduct a nursing education program preparing persons to practice nursing as advanced practice registered nurses, period. And strike unless the program has been approved by the board.
No, I want the board to be able to approve it.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
No. I mean, and was that, I think that was your intent, wasn't it?
It was. You know, over the years, you and I have worked with the online programs and the out-of-state programs coming in. I think that is absolutely the purview of the General Assembly to make those decisions.
So do I, and I think it's, you know, incumbent on us to protect the citizens of Georgia. And we are having some very fly-by-night graduate programs that are advertised that have no clinical experience whatsoever and no real oversight, and all online. And when we are beginning to let mid-level people, and as they do now, they work under physicians, but they can practice when the physician's not in the office and in satellite offices, then they're relying on their expertise. And I think that we need to make sure that their education is a quality education to do that. Okay, I think that we are. Other questions for the Okay. Is there anybody else signed to sign up? No one else to sign up for the program? Okay, hold on just a minute. Let me make sure Betsy's. I want to make sure this is. Okay, we have a motion to do pass. Do we have a second? I think we have an amendment that's going to be offered.
Yes, ma'am, and I think she's writing it as fast as she can. We ready, Miss Betsy? Madam Chair, if you don't mind, for the sake of time, can I defer to Miss Betsy to read it to us and tell us the lines?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, so this will be the same language added to the end of line 59 and the end of line 73. So at the end, we'll add, provided, however, that the board shall provide annual notice to the chairpersons of the House and Senate Health Committees of any new criteria established pursuant to this paragraph and any costs associated with such new criteria.
Is that agreeable, Senator?
That's agreeable.
Do any of the committee members have questions about the amendment? Can I hear a motion on the amendment?
So move.
We have a motion to do pass. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second amendment. Everybody in the favor of the passage of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no? No? Okay.
Thank you, Madam
now-
Chair and Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Now back to the bill. We have a motion to do pass on the substitute and a second on the substitute to Senate Bill 314. Any further discussion? Not an amendment? All right. Everybody in favor of the passage, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no? You've got it, Senator. Thank you very much for working on this.
Thank you. And Madam Chairman, I was asking you to please carry the bill.
I will do that for you, and because if not, the nursing board chairman's going to drive me crazy. And I say that with fond respect to the nursing board. They are trying to improve their lot. I will say to the representative, we also have a problem sometimes because of job satisfaction. And there are multiple problems causing nurses to leave nursing. We've had a lot more come back in during the recession, but as the recession lightens up and people, other people in the family are making more money, we also will see an exodus again. But there's a variety, and I think our workforce is looking at this. And there is going to be a meeting in May where nursing educators and CEOs of hospitals who are having problems, feeling like that maybe our schools are not turning out nurses ready to work on a basic med-surg floor. They're going to come together and talk about the problems and how they think that we can move forward on these issues and improving nursing education and nursing care in the state of Georgia. So we thank you for the board. Thank you very much, Dr.
Madam Chairman, I know time's of the essence, but I think this is real important to let the Health Committee know, because I know I've let my Senate Health members know that the deans of the nursing schools across the state, both the private and the public, have formed a coalition, and we are now meeting, and I met with them at West Georgia College. They met for 2 days. I met for 1 day with them. And if we're ever in your area of the state, it's not just Metro Atlanta. They have been meeting all over the state at the different nursing schools. If I'm in that particular area and anyone would like to join us, I think you would find it very refreshing to meet with those deans and the staffs of all the different schools to see what is going on in nursing. It's a wonderful thing to see them promoting their profession that they haven't done in the past, and I think that's very, very positive.
Well, and while we're educating the committee, I will tell you one of the problems that we're having. Most of the schools of nursing have a waiting list of qualified applicants, and they can't take them. And one of the reasons they can't take them, we have a lack of clinical space, and you've got to have the clinical experience. The other is that so many of our nurse educators can make about $30,000 or $40,000 more as a nurse practitioner than they make as a nurse educator. And so now people with master's degrees and doctorate's degrees in nursing are deciding to go and work in the clinical area rather than being college professors. And our college professors in nursing are aging out at about 55 years of age or 56 years of age. And it is a real problem when we have qualified students who want to enter nursing that are Georgia students, and we just don't have faculty to handle the load. So we have multiple problems. Thank you, Senator.
So much. Thank you.
Okay. Here we go. All right, let's go. Senator Hudstetler. Senate Bill 230. And, okay, we'll be working off LC 372104S. LC 372104S. Senate Bill 230. Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I brought this originally from the American College of Surgeons, and this had been passed out of both the House and the Senate the year before I came to the Senate. It was brought into response from the Katrina disaster, bringing in healthcare providers into a state, and for some reason it got hung up in a grease and didn't get out. And so the bill now is essentially what had been passed out then, with one exception. It was determined that the registry is with the Department of Public Health, not with the Department of Community Health. So that was changed. And what this allows is that in the event of a disaster from a hurricane, a tornado, a sugar refinery explosion, any number of disasters that could happen, that we could bring in volunteer-only health care providers into the state if they were pre-registered with the registry. And there's no cost for the registry because it's already existing for federal and state employees. This would just be bringing private practitioners in. It also specifically spells out that these individuals that come in would not be allowed to practice outside the scope of practice of what the state laws of Georgia are, or their own scope of practice. It's supported. I think you may have a couple of handouts in there from the American College of Surgeons and the Uniform Law Commission. I know the Board of Governors had supported it as well. And that's a quick summary, but I won't go any further unless there's a need to explain further.
Okay. Representative Peasel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, overall, I like the bill. I do have a question starting on line 104, basically 104 through 114. The governor may waive, limit, restrict, or otherwise regulate, and then it's got the 4 different points. If we've got Jim Butterworth heading up GEMA, why do we have the governor with the power to limit, restrict, or otherwise regulate these 4 instances?
I would think that he would leave that to his executive that works for him. But basically, it's trying to give him broad powers to bring people in, but not you may not even want some people into an area, so it just gives him a little bit of control. And I would think he would do it through Jim Butterworth, but ultimately it's his authority.
But isn't it really Jim Butterworth's authority right now? Because he's the subject matter expert in this.
It's his authority, but they're not credentialed in the state. So the problem, and I know I'm talking about 2 different things here, but the problem right now is they're not credentialed in the state. Once they're on this registry and show that they're a health care provider in good standing and they're on the national registry, then they can come in and practice. But that doesn't mean we necessarily want them in. So that's the first part of it. The second part is you're saying, why would we give the governor the authority instead of Jim Butterworth? Is that the question? Or?
Right.
Yeah.
If we're taking the authority away from Jim Butterworth in a manner like this, as the head of the Georgia Emergency Management Association or agency, what's the point of having him in the first place?
Well, I wouldn't think it would be taking away from him, but obviously in the event of a natural disaster, we like to have the governor to have some broad discretion.
Well, sure, I understand about giving him the authority to declare disasters, but as far as managing the disaster, that would really be Butterworth's job, would it not?
Right.
And to get into the governor waiving, limiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating these 4 areas, which is Butterworth's expertise and not any governor's, not necessarily.
I would think he would, if he did that, he would be leaning on those that work under his executive branch. I mean, basically, this is giving the executive branch broad authority, but I'm certainly not a lawyer.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Reiners.
Thank you. There's a part of me.
Could I add one more thing real quick on that?
Certainly, Senator.
We did take that to GEMA, and they had no problems with this. They accepted that language and were in agreement with it. So I should have added that too. Sorry.
Piggybacking on Representative Peasel, there's a part of me that thinks that the system of checks and balances that we have, Senator, in this state and in other places means that their direct accountability lies with the elected official and not an agency head. Mm-hmm. So whether we've got snow or ice in Atlanta a couple of years ago, that the people want to be able to talk to the person or hold accountable the person who can actually make that kind of decision. And I'm just wondering if that's not the thought process a little bit behind it, because we couldn't hold an agency head accountable directly as the people. So I kind of, if a governor shuts down a bridge, he should own that. Not that that's ever happened, but thank you.
All right.
If I remember right, it's the governor who has the powers to declare an emergency in emergency areas, and then he will ask the President of the United States for federal funding for those specific areas. So that's really the reason this is in there. Only the governor can do that. Now, you're right.
But this section is And I'm certainly not disputing that the governor.
Would you like to speak?
Would
you like to ask permission?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
No, never mind.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Me too.
Come on, I'm just. Representative Pizzo, you can ask your question and talk to him about it. Go ahead.
That's your checks and balances.
I'm certainly not disputing that it's the governor's authority to declare a state of emergency. That's absolutely clear. But the point of this section is not regarding declaration of an emergency. It's micromanaging who comes in, where they can practice, how they can practice. That's Butterworth's purvey, not any governor's purvey, in my opinion. Just my 2 cents.
Would perhaps the governor be I don't think the governor would make the decision. I think he would probably delegate that to.
We could call down the second floor and see what he says.
I would think that somebody like O'Neill, Dr. O'Neill, would perhaps be a better choice than Butterworth on deciding what a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant could do in practice. I think he would know a lot more about their abilities to do that, and I think the governor would delegate that. I think it's why it might be that way. I don't know that the former Senator Butterworth would really know that much about what would be within their scope of practice and all.
I do have another question.
Okay. Would you like to speak? Go ahead.
Yes. I remember this bill from years ago. Wasn't there somewhere, and I apologize, I've not had time to read it before today. Is there somewhere in the bill that delineates when the emergency is over and those volunteers are their license to practice has expired?
There is, and
I thought that was in there somewhere.
It's he limits the scope of time.
It's up to him, isn't it?
I couldn't remember what it was.
Can you find that? Are you sure, or does it let the governor decide on the time limit?
I was thinking we had it in the bill back then.
Yeah, it should be.
Well, he's got to declare it to begin with, and then he's got to declare it over. The duration of it is in there. He limits, that 108 talks about the duration. So it's, if he declares that the emergency is over, then they would no longer.
It's why it's on line 105, 106, and 107.
Okay,
in that area right there, which says, while a state of emergency declaration is in effect.
Right.
And then the governor can decide the duration of a practice by volunteer health practitioners with respect to such services.
Right.
And these are not paid individuals. That's volunteer only.
Yeah,
so
yeah. They're not going to volunteer forever, are they?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the history on this, and one of the first bills I passed as a freshman in the minority parliament, my second year, was a bill for the Red Cross, which started as. The Red Cross is worried about the fact that many years ago, it hadn't happened yet, there's a fault line that runs from Tennessee down through the top part of Georgia, and they think that we're due for a really bad split. And that was 20 years ago, and they wanted to have people be able to come in from the surrounding states in case we needed help. They also wanted our emergency workers to be able to go to other states so that if there was, like the floods in Louisiana, that our workers could go and learn from how that was run or not run well in case we had a bad hurricane or something on our coastline. So that was, I think, one of the first bills that was ever passed, and it was basically for physicians and being able and finding some way to get them in. And over the years, we've added to that ability because we've certainly seen disasters. Like 9/11 and the disaster with Katrina.
So they're ready on their side of the fault line. We've got to get ready down here.
There's more fault on the side of Tennessee than there is on Georgia.
How about Alabama over the water wars?
Oh, yeah, across the river.
Yeah. Okay. We. No, we have. Wait just a second. Representative Pack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, in lines 127 on, I have a question about the volunteer health practitioner registration. So they have to actually be registered to a system before they could help?
They do. And there's a registry in place for federal and state employees. This would put the private practitioners into there. And it's at no cost because the registry is already in place. There's no fiscal cost to this. But if they're not registered and part of the system, then they wouldn't be allowed to come in.
So the physician has to actually go in and register to work for free?
We have to have some sort of credentialing on them and know who they are, not just, it's a time of chaos. This is done ahead of time so that we know who they are.
What if someone who's not registered, who's a licensed, they would have to, is there a process either in GMA or the governor's office during emergencies to be credentialed immediately?
I think they would have to go through this registry and get credentialed on it first.
Do you know approximately how long that takes?
I don't know that. I don't know if there's anyone here that would know that, but I'm not sure the time frame on that. But we'll certainly be encouraging all the healthcare providers to be registered and part of this.
Okay,
right now, they can't do it at all. I mean, I know what you're saying, but this is better than what we've got in place. But
I look at it as if they're licensed in another state. If the governor could just waive the reciprocity or the licensing rule, and that person should be able to help, right? Instead of having them register to volunteer, who seem to me better, like in an emergency, the governor or GMA could say, as long as you're licensed in a certain scope of practice area, in an emergency, you could come to our state and help.
Well, you would think so, but Katrina is what started this. They saw the problems, and Louisiana was the first state to pass this bill. And they felt like this is what they needed for the next disaster. So we're modeling after that.
I mean, Representative Pack, if I remember the discussion on it before, was that in the time of a major disaster, there is such chaos that trying to get anybody to get a hold of other states, and that would take, I mean, it's such a problem to do it in the middle of when you're trying to deal with a disaster, that is not the time to be doing it. And you could have anybody coming in and saying, I'm a doctor and I'm licensed, and I know my husband was a physician. I don't think he carried a card in his pocketbook that said he was, he probably did. I think there might have been some kind of license, but there's no way to verify that kind of information, I think is what the problem was, if I remember past discussions. Representative Broadwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, thank you for bringing the bill and sort of to play off what Madam Chair was talking about. In researching this bill and with emergency management, has there been any sort of discussion for sort of a regional reciprocity with neighboring states?
Any state that passes this is part of that. Tennessee has already passed it, so they're part of reciprocity.
Okay.
If they don't pass it, then maybe we can't go into their state. But I know for sure they're one that.
There'd have to be a system. There'd have to be a system in place, or some sort of enabling.
So right now we can go into Tennessee and help out, but they can't come here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for bringing the bill.
Okay, we have time for two more quick questions, and I mean quick. Representative Henson.
Thank you. We have passed things, this is a question, in the past that would allow retired doctors, dentists, etc., to donate their time, but they're not being included in this at all, are they? But we're allowing them to practice at clinics.
Right, they would have to register to do it.
But this does not allow them to register to do this because they're not in good standing because they're retired.
Yeah, they don't have to. They have a state license.
No, okay.
Is that correct? I mean, that we're not taking advantage of any of
Representative Hawkins is saying this covers out-of-state people, not in-state people.
Oh,
and so
okay.
they would be in-state.
Okay, fine.
Representative
Thank you.
Sharper. Oh, he passes. Okay, that's all the questions.
Motion to pass.
Okay, we have a motion to pass. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak to the bill? No? Okay. Everyone in favor of the passage of the, what's the bill? The Senate Bill 230. Say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Okay. All right. Let's take a hand vote. Everyone in favor, say raise your hand. Got it. Everyone opposed, no. Raise your hand. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Senator Huffstone. The House sponsor? Who's
That is Rick Jaspers.
Representative Jaspers? Okay, thank you very much.
Sponsor of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, okay. All right, we have Senate Bill 114. That used to be your bill. It's coming over to you again.
Okay.
Okay, it's that time of year when we have had a change, and we have certain groups that we exempt from the number of, it's Senate Bill, it's the substitute Senate Bill 114, it's LC 336606S. We exempt certain groups from the number of the limit to 4 nurse practitioners that a doctor can supervise, such as the Department of Public Health, the Board of Health, Community Service Board, which we did for the senator last year. We have a new service that's being offered in our state. It's something new that's being tried. Some of our ambulance services are beginning to put registered nurses in the ambulances to go out on calls in areas where we have a shortage of family practitioners, and to evaluate the patients and see if it's something that can be handled on site, and it's not really an emergency, or either they can evaluate whether they need to call the patient's family practitioner and they need to be transported to the doctor's office rather than the emergency room. And they would like to be able to, since we have, round the clock service, to be able to supervise more than 4 nurses. This would put them in the group as long as it's an emergency medical service operated on or behalf of a county municipality with a full-time medical director. And so it would add them so that they could hire 9 or 10 to be able to cover the shifts. Discussion.
I think it's a great addition. I don't have any discussion beyond that, I guess.
Author, have anything to add?
Me? No. That author. Okay, Representative Ryan.
Real quick, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. Are you saying that in order to do this, if you're a city or a county, you must have a full-time medical director?
At this point, Senator, this is sort of an experimental program.
Okay.
It's new and different. If this begins to work and we could get down the future, but I think on an experimental basis, we don't want some little county to be hiring 10 nurse practitioners if they can find them. And in rural Georgia, they're going to have trouble finding them because they're not there, but and not have them really closely supervised in this new capacity.
Right. Thank you. And I just didn't know how many cities or counties, and I don't looking for a number. I just didn't know how many of them had a medical director. So thank you.
Most of them, somebody in the fire department.
Okay.
Police department and all. They usually cover more than one service.
Thank you.
Questions? No questions? Is anybody in the audience who would like to? Okay. What's the will of the committee? Got a do pass. Second. I've got a second. Any further discussion? Everyone in favor of the passage to Senate Bill 114, the substitute, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
If you would carry that over in the
I'll take
Senate. Okay, thank you very much. All right, what have we got left? I think we have one left. We're adding on. Huh? Okay, Senate Bill 337. Senator Walker. Okay, it's 337. Yeah, you did. Huh? For which one? Yeah. Okay, we're doing the substitute to Senate Bill 337, and this is LC 336609ERS. Okay. I tell you what, Senator Walker, welcome to the Health and Human Service Committee. Sure is unusual to have a Larry Walker sitting on our side of the aisle, so I'd like to welcome you over. I enjoyed knowing your dad. I like it much better now that you're on our side. How's that go for family Sunday dinners?
It works out just fine. I think times have changed, and he would be on our side
if
also.
he had started over a new career this time. Okay, Senator, go ahead
but
with your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee. This is a bill to make life a little bit easier for the brave men and women that serve in our military, that have a dependent that is requiring medical assistance from the state or that is developmentally disabled. Georgia has a long history of strong support of our military. We've got 7 military bases in Georgia and a lot of other military installations. I'm proud in District 20 to represent Robins Air Force Base, which is the economic engine of our region. It employs 23,000 people and is a huge asset to us. The Georgia residents that are in active duty military sacrifice so much for us and our freedoms, and oftentimes, of course, they are this bill only applies to Georgia residents, but naturally in the military they have change of duty station and they move outside the state of Georgia temporarily. It may be to another state, it may be overseas, and because of the movement around of the military, their dependent also possibly is moving outside of Georgia. So what this bill does is it directs the Department of Community Health to keep a registry of these dependents that are eligible for medical assistance or developmentally disabled, and to restore their services upon their return to the state of Georgia. Also, if a military family is residing outside of Georgia and they know they're going to exit the military or know they're going to be returning to Georgia, they can go ahead and start the application process ahead of time to get their dependent in the system and essentially get in line for services for when they do return to Georgia. There's no fiscal impact of this because these are citizens that are already eligible for services and the services are already budgeted for. This bill did pass unanimously out of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee and also passed unanimously in the Senate. So I would ask for your support of it, please, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Representative Petrie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Walker, my good friend. And I did want to make sure I understand. So we've got waivered services out there for people who, individuals who have developmental disabilities, and so you've got service members that might have a disabled child, let's say, and we have, I think today, about 8,000 or 9,000 people on the waiting list for comp alone. It's one of the waivers for developmental disabilities. So as they're moved around to their duty stations, you point out, this would make sure that if they've already been in a system, they're expedited in getting services when they come back to the state.
That's correct. Yes,
is that
sir.
me I'm trying to understand it in the world that I understand.
Yes.
And I have certainly seen instances where that would be. We certainly want to make it easy for military servicemen and women who are serving this country. So I applaud you for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the gentleman, I've tried to read through this bill a couple of times, and like the gentleman up there, I'm just still a little confused. And I know I appreciate what you're doing, and I don't think I really understand it yet. But now these military personnel and their families actually they have a federal government insurance, health insurance, while they're in service. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
This is related after their discharge and no longer in service. Is that?
Well, I think that's where it's going to help them probably the most. I think you've hit on a good point. I think it's active duty military that are fixing to exit the military. They are Georgia residents and they want to go ahead. They're not residing in Georgia currently because of their military service, and so their dependent is not residing in Georgia. It allows them to go ahead and apply for services for when they do return. It doesn't put them at the front of the line. It just allows them to go ahead and start the application process. But also in the event that they have already been awarded services while they're in Georgia for this dependent, it would expedite them getting services restored once they return to Georgia, but I'm told that generally they are getting it through the federal government, the benefits that the military personnel have.
May I ask you another question?
Yes.
And here again, just trying to make sure I understand what we're voting on. On page 1, the definition of military service says means service in the armed forces or reserves or membership in the National Guard. And then on page 2, 29 and 30, the department shall allow legal residents who are dependents of a military service member and who are absent from the state due to a such members' military service absent from this state due to such military service to be added to the database. Here again, it's just my confusion, but a National Guardsman or a reservist, either one could be, they could be absent from the state for a day or a week or 2 weeks, or what exactly are we saying there in 29 and 30? I'm just trying to understand it. I mean, when you think of somebody, a military service personnel being absent from the state, you're thinking about them being gone for some extended period of time of active duty. Is what
Of course, it's talking about their dependents now. So if they're in active duty, military personnel, and they are going on a training mission, I guess you would call it, for 2 weeks in the desert, and
or a week. It could even be a weekend out of the state. Yeah.
They're not going to move their dependent with them in that situation.
Okay.
It's talking about dependents of active duty military getting the benefits. So a disabled child, developmentally disabled child, is what we're talking about.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. That's it. Any other questions? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the bill? Okay. What's the position? Okay, we have a motion to pass in a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Everybody in favor of the passage to Senate Bill 337, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And Representative Shaw Blackman is going to carry it for me in the House.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll go see the Rules Committee.
Okay, we have one more short thing, and we're not doing too badly on time. House Resolution 1382. Did we get it passed out? It's not on your... Did we get it in the thing? We got it.
Is that Ms. Buckman?
Pardon?
Is that...
Right. Uh-huh.
Oh, she's here.
Right. And you can sit, just do it, this thing.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Cooper. This resolution came about as at the beginning of the session, we were hearing a great deal from state retirees and employees of the state and teachers about the increased cost of the state health benefit plan, and they asked that they be allowed to have members on the Department of Community Health Board. Yeah. There have been bills for the last 4 sessions asking for those appointments to the Community Health Board, and those bills have not made it across the finish line. So there were conversations that were made, and what was decided is that the thing for us to do is not to tell the department what to do, but to urge them to please include some representation from employees, teachers, retired and currently employed, so that they could have a conversation prior to the health insurance plans being purchased and just gather input from those individuals. And that's what this does. It is establishing a customer advisory council to the board so that they can have input on the state health benefit plan for themselves and the retirees.
Any questions for the representative? No questions. Everybody's ready to go. Okay, we have a motion to pass. We've got a second. Is there anybody who wants to speak to the bill that feels like they have to? Okay. Everyone in favor of the passage of House Resolution 1382, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you to the committee. We have some bills they're still working on, so will you watch for a notice? I'm going to try to maybe do it on Monday to give us a little more time to get it out. So just watch for your notice of your committee. Thank you. We're adjourned.